Thank you for joining me on the Sutherland Report. The privilege of giving me your time. We're going to jump straight in it, and I'm going to bring on my dear friend John Haller, and we are going to have, I think, a rather important update in regard to world events. John, good to see you. Thank you again for kindly visiting with me. It's much appreciated, sir.
I hope this looks like a forced smile because it is. It's good to be with you, Mark.
John, and just before we came on air, there was there, as you said, a forced smile. What is on your mind, sir? What is concerning you right at this moment?
So as we're recording this, I'm getting ready to interview one of the best military security analysts in Israel about the situation there. And I'm a big Israel supporter, as you know, and that's something that's concerned to me. And I'm also thinking about next week. I'll be doing some talks. I'll be in actually Friday the 8th. I'll be speaking at the conference that Tom Hughes from Hope for Our Times is setting up, titled "The End of the World Conference." And I don't know that it's misnamed in light of everything that's going on. Of course, we have the election here next week, and then Tuesday night I'll be with Tom down at Calvary Chapel, the Harbor, talking about what's going on in the world, sort of a prophecy update. I think that'll be 7 p.m. Pacific time, Tuesday night, Calvary Chapel, the Harbor, but in Huntington Beach. I'm sort of thinking through what I want to talk about, and I've sort of jokingly, I'm a Bible prophecy guy, so I've sort of taken the Wheel of Fortune thing, and I've made up a graphic that's in process about the prophecy Wheel of Fortune. I don't know what I'm going to talk about. I may just get up there and spin it, and whatever it ends on, I'm sure I can talk for an hour about. The election next week is heavy on my mind, and Mark, we are being gaslit like I've never seen. Gaslit, however you use that term, like I've never seen before, leading up to an election. And we have 5 days to go. I've already voted, but the things I'm hearing are just very, very concerning. And it seems like we're getting set up for a controversy similar to what we had 4 years ago. So when I talk with my friend Tom, which would be late East Coast time after all the polls have closed, I don't know when we'll know who will have been claimed to have won the U.S. election.
Because your election day has been turned into election week, election month, if not 3 months, if not 6 months, unfortunately. But John, what are you hearing? I know I'm hearing a few things, but you're there? What are you hearing on the ground? What is making you extremely concerned?
Well, I was just listening to an interview on War Room, and of course that will identify me as one of the crazy nuts. But Steve Bannon came back yesterday, his first full day back at the War Room podcast, because he's been in prison. And I heard him described the other morning on MSNBC by Mark Elias, who is a lying election thief for the left here in the United States. He's an excellent lawyer, but he's a complete corrupt lawyer. And he engages in lawfare. And he described Bannon as a convicted felon, which is a complete misrepresentation. Bannon was convicted of a misdemeanor, and he was sentenced. I don't know if this has ever happened before. He was sentenced to time in federal prison for a misdemeanor. That usually does not happen. Misdemeanors are usually handled locally. But I think Peter Navarro, who was an advisor to Trump, also served time in federal prison too. And part of this is the lawfare aspect of this is very concerning. Lawsuits are being filed all over the place by both sides. And it's, in my view, it's completely out of control. You and I have talked off air about what happens to people who get caught up in the system. So with regard to the election controversy 4 years ago, there have been a number of lawyers who defended the Trump position.
Yes.
They've been disbarred. John Eastman is one example. He is probably one of the 3 leading constitutional law experts in the country, and he made some claims under the Electoral Vote Counting Act that would have been enacted in the late 1800s, and it was a very ambiguous act. And he took a position on that. I don't think it was what I would term as a lawyer an aggressive legal position or anything like that. But because it did not fit with the narrative, John Eastman's life has been destroyed. He has spent millions of dollars in legal fees. He's lost his license to practice law. He's fighting it. And they have no proof. Another case is the felony, the 34 felony convictions against Trump that we hear about in New York state courts. Mark, there is online a video of the oral argument on former President Trump's appeal of those convictions. I'm a lawyer, okay, and as a lawyer involved in litigation for 40 some years, or have been involved for 40 some years, sometimes you tell your client, we're going to try this case, but because of the way the judge is, we're going to lose the case in the trial court, but we will win it on appeal. And that prediction came through a number of times in my career, because judges, they have their own biases, or they play golf with the attorney on the other side, and they're going to do everything in his favor. But you kind of get away from that at the Court of Appeals level. But what happened in this Trump appeal was, the end of the appeal was not so much defending the lawsuit or the convictions of Trump. It was basically the prosecution team, the team representing them on the appeal, saying, please don't sanction us for bringing a frivolous case. Because the judges said, this is a ridiculous case. Every loan was paid back. The banks did further loans with Trump. And the question was, what right do you have to bring up anything about whether whether this was wrong, and how was the public damaged? And maybe we should sanction you. So their rebuttal, almost the whole rebuttal time, was spent defending why they should not be sanctioned for bringing this case against Trump. And then I know you've done a lot of research on the election controversy as well. That's been a gaslighting operation the whole way through. And you know that, and I know that. And people are languishing in jail, still not having been tried, by the way, almost 4 years later. This is so egregious. So we're in this case of lawfare that's very, very concerning to me. Now, listen, I represented some white-collar defendants. I know how the system works. Some of the names in the news that you will see on the Democratic side of things, I have dealt with personally. I know what it's like for people who get caught up in these investigations, because the goal is not to win. The goal is to bankrupt you, so your life is ruined, and then that in and of itself will send a chilling effect on anybody else who would stand up to these people.
Absolutely, and I'm just going to do just a quick reminder, and we bring this up because this book, The American Gulag Chronicles, is to raise money for the Jan 6 prisoners, and I just asked people to buy this book because the money goes to support the prisoners that are in the American gulags, as we are calling them. And John, you are absolutely right. And of course, we've got people languishing in your jails. There's 300, just over 300, I think, at this time. And and the lawfare and the misdemeanors, etc., etc., for standing on the grass, for being a grandmother who is praying, for being a couple who were nowhere near the building or standing by a barrier, and then they're both praying, and then the wife opens her eyes to discover that the police are beating her husband, so she then steps in to defend him and stop that, and then they're given a prison sentence. We've got situations like that. We've also got, I think, the amazing lady Tina Peters, who is a Gold Star mother because her son died in action, and I'm not sure if Tina, if it's in Arizona or Nevada, but she was in charge of making sure that her county. I'm just trying to get your setup right in regard to the election and making sure that the votes are done right.
She's in Colorado.
She's in Colorado. I do apologize.
Yeah, she was the election coordinator in one of the counties, and she questioned some things, and she's in prison now, I think, or she's been sentenced to prison.
Yeah, they've sent her for 9 years, and she got the evidence. So this whole lawfare, and it ties up with something else, which is deeply concerning. And then we go down, John, talk about this, where we were just watching Caroline Glick talking about this, which is a gentleman that's now imprisoned in, and we're going to crisscross back to the UK, but a gentleman that's imprisoned now in Cyprus. And could you lay out why he is now in jail? What did he reveal? What did he find out a few years ago that relates to 2020?
So, okay. So let me tell you this though, too, is I want to tie this into a biblical aspect.
Right.
Because this is what Jesus was talking about in Matthew chapter 24, where he said, you will be brought before magistrates and judges. And so we know that this is what Jesus said would happen near the end. Now, it's happened all through church history, that's for sure. But there seems to be an acceleration of this, and the system has been weaponized. So this guy, and I cannot remember the guy's name, he had actually met with federal prosecutors to tell them about Biden corruption. Biden's taking a vast sums of money, millions of dollars from China. He was then arrested on these trumped up, which I'm going to go out on a limb and say, I don't know. I'm just going to assume they're trumped up charges given where they're coming from. On these trumped up charges of weapons, of arms dealing, which he says, I'm not an arms dealer. But then he raised issues about the Hunter Biden laptop that Hunter Biden had left, who's now, by the way, been pled guilty to federal felony. He's a felon. Okay. And so I think what you're seeing here, I'll explain what I think is going on in the background. But so this guy, he gets arrested in Cyprus. He gets out of prison. Now he's been arrested again. And they're trying to extradite him to the United States. And this extradition is a very big deal because it completely takes away your freedom. You can't defend yourself. And this is what there was a guy, a Metro police guy in the UK, who said, if you post something wrong on social media, we're going to come after you in the United States, and we're going to try to extradite you to the UK to stand trial. This was
the commissioner of the Metropolitan Police.
Okay, so he just wasn't sort of some low-level flunky. No, he's like the guy in charge. And so this is what they're doing. They're trying to extradite this guy. And as Carol, and I highly recommend you go to JNS and watch Carolyn's most recent podcast about this, where she does cover this. He's threatened to be extradited to the U.S. The attorneys have gone in, and of course now, so he has to hire attorneys. Let me tell you, attorneys are expensive. You get caught up in cases like this, you're going to spend. How many of you have $2 million to spend? you know. And I've been involved in cases with clients where we've contacted high power criminal defense attorneys, and they start talking to you when you put $2 million on the table. Most people cannot afford this. So this guy, they're threatening to extradite him. His attorneys are coming in and saying, "Oh, wait a minute. The extradition treaty does not allow him to be extradited if the purpose is for political persecution." And it's clear he's going against the Bidens. And this is part of this is the narrative that they're trying to protect. This is what I said I was going to circle back to. They're trying to protect the narrative because before Biden leaves office, Hunter Biden, Joe Biden's brother, and everybody is going to receive a presidential pardon.
Yep.
They do not, though, want to do that before the election next Tuesday. So a lot of what this is being done is to delay the game until they can get beyond November 5th, when there won't be any political consequences to pardoning Hunter Biden. But what happened with this guy was Miranda Devine at the New York Post published an article in, I don't know, late October, 4 years ago, almost 4 years ago today, that this Hunter Biden laptop confirmed everything that this guy was saying about the corruption of the Biden family and taking millions and millions of dollars from China. Then Carolyn points out in her podcast interview that Anthony Blinken, who's now our Secretary of State, who's running around telling Israel, you've got to make peace and enter into a ceasefire and stop fighting, these people who have attacked you, who've rained thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of rockets down on you from the south and from the north. You need to do a ceasefire. Who took 200 some hostages, and half of them are still there, and I don't know, I doubt that even half of them are still alive. But Blinken got 51 former security people like John Brennan, Clapper, former heads of the CIA, to say, oh, the Hunter Biden laptop thing was completely false.
Absolutely.
But they've gone into court since and said, you shouldn't be able to use Hunter Biden's laptop against him because he didn't give it up voluntarily or something. Well, wait a minute. I thought the thing was fake. And nobody's apologized. No. Nobody who's done this has lost their security clearance. They all of them probably have post government, consulting jobs where they're making lots and lots and lots of money, where they could afford lawyers, by the way, but they've not lost their security clearances or anything. And my fear is we're starting to see a repeat of what happened 4 years ago.
Let's expand on that. When you're starting to see a repeat.
Well, I just think that there's going to be a lot of lawsuits, and a lot of people are going to get caught up in the legal system that might express outrage and concern about what's going to happen next week. Now, I've already voted here in Ohio. I was just listening to this War Room podcast, and the guy was saying, I don't know what state it was because I didn't have time to pick it up before I got online with you, that the people are taking 18 to 20 minutes to go through the ballot. Well, what's this going to do? It's going to expand the length of the lines on election day. So we voted early. And I will tell you, the Ohio ballot, it's very simple. You vote electronically, you get a confirmation slip, then you go over and scan it. And you can check and make sure that it's scanned correctly. And you need to do that because there's a lot of instances where people say, well, that's not who I voted for.
That's right.
But to be honest with you, it took me less than a minute to vote on all the issues and offices. I mean, I knew who I was voting for, and I live in a highly Republican county, so there's there's not a lot of choices for a lot of offices because it's just one party running.
And you have got a receipt of your vote in how you voted, right?
That's correct. Good. Yeah, it's all and you can see and I took a picture of it, to make sure that that's probably illegal, but other states are not that way. And the other thing, Mark, is I don't understand is I see, and this is not to be derogatory or anything, it's just the terminology everybody uses. Third world countries do paper ballots, and they have the election results within like 2 hours of the polls closing.
And India as a country is a case in point in how they run their ballots.
But here in the United States, we have all this electronic stuff, and we won't know for days. So my prediction is you're going to see a lot of Trump victories in states, but don't get too excited about it.
And already, haven't we had a senator, congressman, you can correct me, Grassley, who is a Democrat, turning around and saying, we are going to be, if it goes against us, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he's hinting at this, they're going to be there on Jan 6.
That was Jamie Raskin.
Jamie Raskin, sorry.
He was one of the big guys on the J6 committee.
Yeah.
This propaganda thing that was set up, illegally set up, improperly set up to run this operation, and done in a highly, highly unethical way. And Liz Cheney should get what she's gotten for everybody else.
Yeah.
This is so corrupt. And so I'm concerned. And so I'm just saying is a lot of people are going to challenge whatever happens. And I can tell you that the consequences will be one way only. It will only be Republicans who go to jail. Because right now, the Department of Justice is controlled by guys like Merrick Garland.
Yes.
Who is I shudder to think what it would have been like if he'd gotten onto the Supreme Court.
Supreme Court. Yeah. Yeah.
And he is corrupt. I don't even know what to say. And so the whole of government is to go after these people. And look, the government has. So I did some research on this a couple of years ago. I believe that the Department of Justice. Well, if you remember, there was this sort of myth that got created that there were thousands and thousands and thousands of sealed indictments against people on the Democratic side of things. Do you remember this narrative?
Yes, I do. Very much
so.
It
was total, complete nonsense. It never happened. It could not have happened. I know what it takes to put an indictment together. Because I've been through that process with clients, and I've been involved in the process leading up to the indictment, and it takes years to put these indictments together. So that these things were being done at the rate of I don't know how many dozen a day for months on end. There's only like 8,500 attorneys in the Department of Justice across the country. So it's just not physically possible for them to convene grand juries to do this. I'm sorry that people fell for it. It was a total, complete lie all the way through. And that's because the Republicans did not control the levers of power. They didn't control the Department of Justice back in those days, in the early days of the Trump administration. It takes time to reorient how those departments are organized. The government,
it takes time to then weed out the political opposition that is within those departments. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah. So let me give you an example. So here's a current example that I'm still researching and I don't know. So a couple of weeks ago, there was a leak of very sensitive, highly classified Pentagon documents about Israel attack plans, things that Israel had shared with the United States, and then the U.S. security military establishments evaluation of them. They were top secret. They got leaked on a Iranian regime approved Telegram channel.
Yep.
And so now they've started an investigation. By the way, this is treason. We have interest, that what Israel is doing is supporting U.S. interests with regard to this regime that wants to kill every single one of us. Okay. By the way, they say it all the time. I watch Khamenei's Twitter account, his website. It's all death to Israel, death to America. You should take them serious when they say that. So now I forgot where I was going with all of this, but go ahead.
No, you were where
the lady was
that.
So the question is, who leaked these documents? So the suspicion has fallen on two people. One is a lady, and I cannot remember her name. It begins with an A. She has worked extensively with the Iranian government-backed think tanks and whatever, and she's even emailed with them about, well, should I take this position or not when I testify in front of Congress? And so there's pretty good suspicion that she's the one who did the leaking. But this is an example of what I'm going to talk about with the way the government works, because this happened back when Trump took office in 2017. And this raises a whole nother issue about what we need to be very, very careful. If Trump does win this somehow, what's going to happen in the next 75 days? Because they will do things to put in place what they want. And here's an example of this lady. She was in this position with the Pentagon. She's now been moved over to another position. My suspicion, not confirmed, is that she was a political appointment in her prior position and had to be confirmed by the Senate. But what may have happened to her. She's now moved to another position magically, all of a sudden. And I suspect that what's happened with her, still to be confirmed, but it did happen with thousands of people at the end of the Obama administration, 2016 to 2017, where they were taken from political positions and put into positions within the federal government that it's almost impossible to fire them. So when Trump came into office, he had the DOJ thing in 2017. He had the DOJ was not working with him because they were largely appointments. And so the usual position, Obama did it, Clinton did it. You fire all of the U.S. district attorneys in all of the judicial districts across the country. There's 80 or 90 of them. And then you hire your own guys, and then they can hire the people down through them. But that takes time. And the guys that are appointed, I believe, have to be approved by Congress. So you don't get to do it immediately. So what happens is there's a transition time. And when you're trying to do a transition, when the whole of government is now populated with even more people are going to be against you and who you're prohibited from firing, in large part, you have a major problem. And if you don't think that if Trump wins this somehow, that this is not going to happen in the next 75 days between now and January 20th, the election in January 20th, you're completely misguided. And I hope you don't have to do too many things on your own, because I don't think you're competent to do them. If you cannot see that this is happening. And I'm sorry if that sounds harsh and cruel, but it's actually the truth. So I'm very concerned about how this is going to go. So I suspect that this lady, who I believe is the prime suspect in leaking these classified documents, is now in a statutorily protected position. And so what I advocated for a few years ago was that if Trump ever got back into office or a Republican ever got back into office, what they needed to do was they needed to completely remake the federal government. They needed to put all of these people in like giant Faraday cages, tell them, you come here every day and sit at your desk. You will not have a computer. You have to deposit your phone on the way in. You can't communicate with anybody or do anything. You're going to get paid. We can't fire you, but you're not going to communicate with anybody while you're here because we have a job to do. And I think that may be the only way. Now, whether anybody has the political guts to do that, I don't know.
I think that sounds a wonderful suggestion. And quickly drawing a parallel here, John, we have got the same problem, which we call the blob. And there is no doubt about it that every single department within government, the civil service, running those supposedly on behalf of the government, supposedly on behalf of us who elected these people, they are, in my opinion, all of a left-wing persuasion, and they are embedded within there. Now, all right, we've just had a supposed, inverted commas, 14 years of a conservative government. There's another long story to say there, but did they actually undo some of this that is now hindering our own country? No, not really whatsoever. E.g., getting out of the European Court of Human Rights and stuff like this. So this is what's really important, because those people are embedded in our own civil service as well. What you have just explained is absolutely brilliant, because we forget about history and we forget about what was going on after Trump then won in 2016. Do you think then that so he wins on November the 5th. Do you then, what processes could he put in place, like, as you've said, a Faraday cage? Would the people around him immediately be able to go through all the offices and say, we need to get rid of this person, this person, this person? I'll end with this. When at the top, when you've got people like John Kerry floating around saying, we've got a problem with the First Amendment. Now, am I correct in saying that his daughter is married to, there's Iranian links there? Or am I just connecting things that I shouldn't?
No, I think that I would highly recommend. I interviewed him. He's a secular historian, Mexican, Francisco Gil White, and he makes the case, and I think he makes a very compelling case, that the whole of government for over 40 years has been to support the Iranian regime, including the Reagan administration. And we know there were major problems with James Baker and some of the things that he did, and that it didn't get better. I don't think it got better under Trump. That's one of the disappointments I have. So the Heritage Foundation came up with a thing called Project 2025, where they essentially took what my thoughts were. I doubt that they listened to me, but there's a lot of other people much smarter than I am involved in these things, and that essentially what they proposed was remaking the federal government. And so then the narrative became, oh, you're racist, you're against women, you're against all this stuff because you want to get rid of these people. So my position is, try to get rid of them, but if you can't get rid of them, then just stick them someplace where they can't do anything. But Trump came out and publicly said, I'm not for Project 2025. Now, was that a misdirection play on his part or not? Or does he not really fully understand the problem? I can just tell you that like at the U.S. attorney level, the Department of Justice, the FBI, and all these things, these organizations, and I know you've talked to FBI people, Mark, former FBI people, the whole system is totally corrupt. And you're talking to a guy who interviewed, coming out of graduate school with some of these federal agencies. And, I would tell you that if I was here and I saw what was going on, I would resign. I think I would have the integrity to resign. So I'm very concerned about where this is going. I don't think that they're set up for it. And I am telling you, look, Israel's a very big deal for me.
Yes.
I think the fight that Israel's fighting is the fight that America needs to be fighting. And Israel is, in many respects, a proxy for us. But I mean, so there at her DC rally, her closing argument in DC the other day, 50,000 people attended for a Kamala Harris rally. It was full of people. Globalize the Intifada.
Yeah.
Kill the Jews.
Yeah.
And so you're going to see stuff on that level. If Trump wins, believe me, folks, the fight is just starting.
Yeah.
You've accomplished nothing until you implement things. So let me give you an example. So Obama loses, or Trump beats Clinton. Obama's leaving office. And what happened? Samantha Power was the ambassador to the United Nations. And a resolution 2334 came before the UN Security Council that was totally anti-Israel in Jerusalem. And for the first time, the United States did not exercise its veto power against an overtly anti-Israel, anti-Jewish resolution at the UN Security Council.
Absolutely. I remember that.
That happened when Obama was a lame duck. He was done. That happened on Christmas Day of 2016. He is out of office in just a little over 4 weeks. Or about 4 weeks. Was there anybody complaining about what he did to kind of make it? No. And I'm telling you, you're going to see stuff like that on a very high level of infused steroids going forward, even if Trump wins. So I'm just telling you. So I don't think I keep thinking about what I'm going to talk about at the end of the World Conference in another week, and I'm thinking like I've got a lot to talk about. I'm really concerned, Mark, where all of this is going. I mean, so I look at things. I sort of look at the UK as sort of a lab experiment for where we're going to end up. And so I see things that happen with the people in prison there. I see the Scottish government has now banned anything that's, I guess I would just term the law, anything that's anti-abortion within a certain zone around abortion clinics in Scotland. I think I have this correct. Correct me if I'm wrong. Including if you're having a prayer service in your home and somebody else finds about it, you can go to jail for that. I read the law.
We have reached a moment, as a contact of mine reminded me today, we have reached the Stasi moment. We have reached the fact that we are now going to be, the Free Poland groups, the Free Hungary groups. We are then pushing back against tyranny. We are beginning to realize that, and I'm not I'm not being clever. Some of us have begun to realize that quite some time ago. And I've just been reminded there is a lady that watches basically the infringements upon our rights then in that sense. And I think her name is Milo Silk. And she, in an interview with the Spectator a few days ago, last weekend, was talking about the fact that the amount of cameras that we have to spy on this, to follow the citizenry of this country. It's extensive. It's on a Chinese level. Right. And of course, China's a lot bigger. But if you take the amount of people, take the amount of percentage of cameras. So Milo was talking about this. She was talking about that. So in other words, these things are in place. This is what's going on. And my concern is it's like over in the US. there are many pastors then that are not encouraging their congregation to go and vote. They're not discussing political issues. You know as well as I do that if we look at magazines like Christianity Today, for argument's sake, in America, which I find rather left wing, there
I
has
think it should be
been
retitled Christianity Astray, but that's
brilliant. Brilliant. Christianity Australia, brilliant. So it's left wing. You've also got these, Christians for Harris and all this kind of thing. How can you, when this woman is totally off the reservation in regard to pushing abortion, we have to remind ourselves of. Remember when there was an undercover reporter that exposed what was going on in Planned Parenthood, and then she came after him. Do you remember that? And she came after him. There was a long list of stuff.
that would be well, I think that was O'Keefe, wasn't it? James O'Keefe.
Yes, yeah.
And those guys, and look, that's lawfare. That's what they do. And by the way, whatever happened with that case? I don't think it ever went anywhere, because the point was they made the guy spend millions of dollars to defend himself. And in the UK is a little bit different. So you can bring a lawsuit in the United States, get sued, and win, and you have to pay your own attorney. That's the American rule. The British rule is a little bit different. You bring a lawsuit and lose, you have to pay the other guy's attorney that you sued. But not in America, and certainly not in criminal cases. So this stuff is going on in epic scale. And so, I mean, I'm seeing people languishing in prison in Britain for protesting certain political issues, hot button issues. And now the narrative comes out that says everything you thought, except maybe one little detail, was correct.
I think what you've in regard to the fact that in regard to the awful incident that happened in Southport, where a 9-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 7-year-old girl were stabbed to death, others injured. The 2 teachers of this Taylor Swift dance class are also injured, etc. And people were concerned. And then, of course, all the chatter on social media. Yes, John, you've said it.
They were not convicted for going outside and protesting. They were convicted for posting about it on social media.
Absolutely. And then it's just been revealed on the day that we had our budget, where we've just had these Fabian communists go, well, let's steal a load of money, raising taxes left, right, and centre, and steal more money off the British people, because they are Fabian communists. I just put it out there, and just to say that no one's really talking about this except one Labour journalist who I need to track down 4 years ago to say that Keir Starmer is a member of the Trilateral Commission. This is true. Now, suddenly, within a mainstream media or fairly independent-minded, people are now waking up and going, we are now got a bunch of communists. Now, going back to on the day of the budget, on the last weekend of putting Tommy Robinson in prison. Now, there are other people greater than me, clever than me, that have been joining the dots up. People like the incredible Katie Hopkins, who did a fantastic piece explaining this. And it's so important that we give credit to people and what they're doing. And in regard to Katie, in that case, and in others. So they then put Tommy Robinson in prison for contempt of court, because this whole argument of his documentary silence had told him not to, I think, release this, is then shown to thousands of people in London a few months ago. Then there was another Get March on the 26th of October, or last weekend, about that. Many people gather in London, and then, as we speak, on Budget Day, it's then the information comes out that the man that did this appalling atrocity at the now 18, he then had the explanation of how to make ricin, and he may have even had that, I think, may have that poison or access to that on his property, and also then reading Aikido terrorist manuals of how then to be a terrorist and conduct yourselves, etc., in that vein. And then we look at what has happened, and what now is the discussion or lack of discussion in the House of Commons, because the leader of the House, Lindsay Hoyle, has said that members of Parliament cannot discuss this case, so it doesn't become sub judice, so it doesn't influence the fact that the prosecution of this young man. Now, that is where we're at. That is what all I will say on that on one level. But the discussion that's going on in free media thinking is, what did the Prime Minister of this country, what did the Home Secretary of this country know? And then various people throwing things out, like Dominic Cummings, who used to be the advisor to Boris Johnson in regard to Brexit and all the rest. He's turning around and saying, well, the Prime Minister of a country would have known, as Liz Truss, our previous Prime Minister, said, they would have known very, very immediately. Meetings would have been interrupted, etc., to pass on the knowledge of if someone is then thinking in a particular terrorist way, to say, this is what we found, this is what we found.
It's an issue of public safety, Mark.
Precisely. Now, the thing is, as a QC, Casey has said, there was a vacuum and there was a lack of information, and then you had then people were asking, there was something not quite right there about this. Now, I will say this, I am not excusing the violence and throwing bricks, etc., police. I am not saying that.
That's right.
But people, as appallingly, and a lot of Americans don't realize this in regard to the Jan 6 prisoners, and as my dear friend David Summerall has said on many, many occasions, that as soon as people were taken into court in regard to, what they're accusing people of doing in regard to exercising their constitutional rights, misdemeanors left, right, and center, if that's what they're going to say, is that they're in there and they're going, well, First Amendment, your free speech rights, they are suspended as soon as you walk into this door. Now, a lot of Americans do not realize that has been going on when they turn, well, we've got the First Amendment, and that is being suspended. So in our own case, where we're shutting down the narrative, no, then they're turning around and going, we're going to arrest people because of tweets and etc., or even, shouting nasty, hurtful things at a police dog. Then we've had people like Peter Lynch, who then was put in jail and then committed suicide. And we have reached a point.
Mark, are they not putting them in jails where the people that people are concerned about are very large portions of the prison population?
Yes. And also,
so say, for example, like Tommy Robinson's life is at risk.
If Tommy Robinson's life could be a risk. I mean, when I believe, right, we want to put him in isolation. The question is that he may not be in isolation. There's been reported that the governor of Belmarsh prison is turning around and saying, well, maybe we've got a problem to save costs and all this kind of thing, and he may be moved. So Tommy needs our prayers very much at this moment. But the other thing is trying to make sure, work hard so we do get their facts. But you are absolutely right, that is a concern. And also without suggesting anything, you and I both know that some of that in various instances can be very convenient for people, can't it? Where suddenly people sadly are disappeared or people are hurt. So God forbid. But these things unfortunately happened. And in regard to Peter Lynch, he committed suicide in there, which is so sad, and the way that the law came against him. Now, this is someone who cares, as a father, as a grandfather, was caring about his country, was a Brexiteer and all the rest. Some people have said, well, we do, he's got this banner up talking about WEF, the WHO, and what people would call us, you and I, conspiracy theories. But we're not conspiracy theories. It's actually the truth. What Peter is saying is actually the truth. And as far as you and I are concerned, all of that can be proven because none of it is conspiracy. In fact, we run out of them because they're all true and they're all real. And that's why at 4 o'clock this morning, you're disturbed by what you're seeing. That's why I at times have been climbing the walls and I'm disturbed by what I'm seeing because I'm just thinking, are people paying attention?
Well, and I'll give Carolyn props because I know her a little bit, and I know where she grew up. She grew up in Chicago, and she actually grew up in the same neighborhood where Barack Obama lived.
Yep.
And down around the University of Chicago. But there was an incident in Chicago last week where a Jewish man wearing Jewish garb was on his way to synagogue and was shot to death. Well, I don't know if he was shot to death or not. He was shot in Chicago. And the video is there. Mark, you can watch the video. The person is saying the same thing as a name of a newspaper in Lebanon, Al Akbar.
Yeah.
Okay. The Chicago police are falling all over themselves to say, well, we can't really say that that's what was said. We're not sure. We're still reviewing things. And so what's happening is why? Because we're in the midst of an election where someone had been appointed. This guy was a illegal immigrant from a country of a certain religion predominating. And we have a person who was called by everybody in the world, the border czar, and this would damage her before the election. So the whole of Chicago and this Marxist mayor that they have up there, and this, I don't know if Kimberly Fox is still the prosecuting attorney up there, the one that tried to bring the case on behalf of that Jesse Smollett, that actor who claimed he was beaten
by Trump supporters,
which was total, complete nonsense. It was a complete made up thing. It was obvious from the moment it came out to any thinking person. And now the Chicago police are falling all over themselves to say, well, we won't know for a couple of weeks until our investigation is complete. It's absolutely identical to Southport. So now if people start going on social media and posting about the travesty of justice that's taking place, the clearly anti-Jewish, anti-Semitic incident that took place in Chicago, the hometown, the birthing place of the Obama, I don't know, whatever you would call it, the Obama administrations that we've lived under for 12 of the past.
Well, John, isn't Chicago then, Nancy Pelosi links, Clinton links in regard to upbringing, et cetera, and of course, as you said,
well, Pelosi grew up in Baltimore, and her dad was a leftist mayor of Baltimore. But sure, Hillary Clinton is from Chicago. I have a friend who used, before he got saved, was involved in politics in Chicago, and he'll tell you that's where I learned to cheat.
Yeah.
And the point is that it's gaslighting. They're like, wait, you saw the video, but it's not what it really shows. Your prejudice is making this up. And Mark, we have such a massive problem. So what's coming to mind right now is the Cass report from the UK, where a doctor came out and said that the NIH was completely off base in giving puberty blocking drugs and sterilization surgeries to children who were questioning their gender. Yeah. Can I just tell you the practical aspect of this? And I'm not trying to, I hope the person that I was talking to does not see this. I was talking to somebody, I won't identify the person, where it happened or whatever. Young guy. And I was talking to him about the fact that the world, and this may be another thing I talk about, the world is in demographic collapse everywhere we look. Birth rates are down. I read the Times and Financial Times, Times of London and the Financial Times every day. And there's article after article about collapsing birth rates.
Absolutely, and someone did a documentary on that and confirmed it. John,
Yeah,
sorry,
I know you got to go.
I
But
know. Yeah.
let me just, if I could just finish the story very quickly. I told him, I said, China and India are going to have 200 million males with no opportunity for a life marriage partner. And the comment he made was, well, why don't we just give them transgender surgeries to half of them, and then we got the problem solved. But and I'm just thinking like, and I'm not just saying he was serious. And so I'm just saying is that I see all this stuff, and some mornings I wake up and it's like, I don't know if I want to get out of bed.
I hear.
Come quickly, Lord, and I appreciate you listening to my ranting and everything, but I'm very concerned about where everything is going.
No, not at all. No, it's really important. These discussions are really important, and I will say this to in the last minute, dear American friends over there, please, make sure you are voting. Make sure you're voting the right way. But we know what coming down the line and the chaos that these people want to create. And also, as I say, as a UK citizen, please, don't forget us outside the UK. This outside your amazing country. This is real. And John, I'm concerned about Christians not participating, but we've got to. John, I just want to say thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mark.
Bless you. Have an amazing interview with the person you're going to speak to, and I'll say goodbye to you on the other side, and I will speak to you very soon. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.